new edition of Africa Today, and we start with reports from the African continent. And the U.S. Treasury has levied sanctions on individuals and entities across the Horn of Africa and Middle East, accusing them of laundering money for Al-Shabaab militant group. Details follow.
The U.S. Treasury said it has levied sanctions on 16 individuals and entities across the Horn of Africa and the Middle East, accusing them of laundering money for the Al-Shabaab militant group. The Treasury said the expansive business network was part of an international fundraising and money laundering web for the Al-Qaeda-linked group operating in Somalia and designated a terrorist organization by Washington. The Treasury said in a statement on Monday, individuals within this network include influential business people in the region. The targeted entities include Dubai-based fintech Halil Commodities LLC, with branches and subsidiaries in Kenya, Somalia, Uganda, and Cyprus. UAE-based Kimat and Najah General Trading, which served as an important money laundering node in the network, and the Kenyan bus company that supported Al-Shabaab's logistics, were also slapped with sanctions. The Treasury said Al-Shabaab generates over $100 million per year by extorting local businesses and individuals, as well as through the financial support of affiliated business people. It added that the funds were distributed worldwide, including to other Al-Qaeda-linked groups, to sow discord and undermine good governance.
And two people died as they attempted to reach Spain's Canary Islands from Africa on a boat with 40 migrants on board, while 4 others were evacuated by helicopter to hospital in serious condition. Details follow.
The pirogue, a type of canoe, was sighted on Monday evening at around 8 p.m. 2000 GMT, a merchant vessel which alerted authorities on the island of Gran Canaria. Rescue services deployed 2 helicopters to evacuate the injured and a ship to tow the pirogue to the Gran Canaria port of Arguineguín, 76 nautical miles to the north, where they were met by Red Cross staff and police. The 34 survivors comprised 27 men and 7 women of sub-Saharan African origin. The EU border agency Frontex says the Atlantic route to the Canary Islands is the busiest route for irregular migration from West Africa into the European Union. The number of migrants boarding boats to attempt the crossing to the Canary Islands has risen more than 6-fold so far this year from the same period of 2023. A total of 11,932 irregular migrants reached the Atlantic Ocean archipelago between January 1 and February 29, compared with 1,865 who arrived in the same period in 2023. Sea conditions around the Canary Islands have been challenging for navigation in the past week, with state weather agency AEMET issuing several alerts over ocean swells.
And the African Development Bank chief is criticizing opaque loans tied to Africa's natural resources. He said they are just bad first and foremost because pricing of assets cannot be conducted properly. More in the coming report.
The head of the African Development Bank is calling for an end to loans given in exchange for the continent's rich supplies of oil or critical minerals used in smartphones and electric car batteries, deals that have helped China gain control over mineral mining in places like Congo and have left some African countries in financial crisis. He said they are just bad first and foremost because you cannot price the assets properly. Akinwumi Adesina was speaking in an interview with the Associated Press in Lagos, Nigeria last week. He said, if you have minerals or oil under the ground, how do you come up with a price for a long-term contract? It is a challenge. Linking future revenue from natural resource exports to loan paydowns is often touted as a way for recipients to get financing for infrastructure projects and for lenders to reduce the risk of not getting their money back. The shift to renewable energy and electric vehicles has caused a spike in the demand for critical minerals, driving these kind of loans. That includes a China-Congo deal that strengthens Beijing's position in the global supply chain for EVs and other products as it taps into the world's largest reserves of cobalt, a mineral used to make lithium-ion batteries in the impoverished Central African country. Adesina, whose Abidjan, Ivory Coast-based institution helps finance development in African countries, said these arrangements come with a litany of problems. He highlighted the uneven nature of the negotiations, with lenders typically holding the upper hand and dictating terms to cash-strapped African nations. He said this power imbalance, coupled with a lack of transparency and the potential for corruption, creates fertile ground for exploitation.
And now we are joined over the phone by Dr. Ahmed Laithi, Nasef, an international economic expert, to tell us more about this loans crisis in Africa. Good afternoon, Dr. Ahmed.
Good afternoon to you.
So, sir, how do you see the spectre of the loans crisis in Africa?
Well, it's a very well-entrenched problem. It goes back to tens of years, and I think we've reached a level where it is basically became a chronic issue to all the economies. It is as simple as, realistically speaking, the countries in Africa would never, given their current GDPs, their production level, would never be able to pay the loans that is booked against them today in mostly in Western countries. If we look at a very good example for that, and basically the case of France and Congo, if I'm not mistaken, France has, I don't remember this number, but has hundreds of tons of gold, where it has 0 mines of gold. And Congo, which is the #1, I think, producer of gold in the world, does not have any gold. It's safe, you know. So what does this tell us? It tells us that the colonization over the years and the structure has, the economic structure that the Western countries has put the African countries into, got them into a deadlock today, where there is no realistic way that they could solve the problems that they have today. And it is a very, very tricky situation to be in.
So, Dr. Ahmed, the head of the African Development Bank, is calling for the end to loans given in exchange for the continent's rich supplies of oil or critical minerals. How do you see this call?
I think it's probably a good step in the right direction, yet it's not 100% doable, because yes, it is true that some countries in Africa do have very good resources of of petrol, but at the same time, not all countries do have that. So what about the countries that do not have oil? And that's #1. And #2, the currency of payment of the loan is not the issue, in my personal opinion. The issue is the ratio of the loan versus the GDP of a specific country. If you pay it in kinds, like petrol or other products, or you pay it in cash, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that these countries cannot afford to pay that much. You know, it's somebody, to very oversimplify the situation, it's like somebody who has a salary of, I don't know, £10,000, and he owes somebody else or a buddy or a card or whatever 5,000 house. He cannot sell it, pay it. His income is much less than his dues. If it were not, then we wouldn't have had the problem. I mean, again, once more, the issue has never been which currency and how to pay it. The issue has always been the relationship between what this country can produce, the economy of this country can produce, and what they make. It's not about cash or time. This is not the issue, in my opinion.
Yes, Dr. Ahmed, also observers say that such loan deals over Africa's rich supplies have helped China gain more control over the mineral mining in places like Congo and have left some African countries in financial crisis. How would you elaborate?
One, that's very true. There is a rule in business and in economy. If you create a vacuum, or if you allow a vacuum to be created, somebody else is going to go and fill this vacuum for you. And I think many of the Western countries have allowed this vacuum to be created. These countries are like jumping from the frying pan to the fire type of thing, because, again, they are being the Chinese do have a certain technique by which they actually take assets, mostly like airports and what have you. They take them as collateral for the loans that they require. And in case the countries are not capable of paying, what they do is they actually acquire the assets, mostly major infrastructure items or ports or airports and what have you. So again, that is a vacuum that was created by the Western ex-colonized, or even some of them are still colonized in some of the countries today. And China stepped in, being the second largest economy in the world, and started to fill that vacuum.
So, sir, one more question: why what can African countries do to avoid the downturn of the loan deals?
I think the only way out is to break that endless loop that they got themselves into. They can never. You see, again, if you're earning 1,000, you can never pay a loan for 5,000. And what is happening is that this loan, because the way, or the loan deals, the way they are structured, is like snowballs that keep growing every year on year, and they reach a point where basically it's totally not solvable. So the only solution would be really that they have to break up that vicious cycle that they are in. These loans have to be renegotiated in a reasonable way to allow them to go on. The current situation is not solvable with the current terms. So in one sentence, they have to change the rules of the game, if you want, and start on a new page, which will not be easy. But they have no other solution. They will not be able to pay these loans. Mathematics, numbers do not lie. This is what it says.
Yes, finally, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Ahmed Laithi, Nasef, an international economic expert. Thank you, sir, for being with us today.
You're most welcome.
Yes. And by that, dear viewers, we come to the end of today's edition of Africa Today. Thank you for watching.